My best friend Jake and I had been planning this vacation for months. We had found an old farmhouse for rent in the middle of nowhere, a place that promised total isolation. No neighbors, no noise, just the two of us and the open fields. When we reached the farmhouse, it stood like a silent sentinel at the end of a dirt road, surrounded by fields on one side and thick, dark woods on the other. The house itself was 2 stories tall, with weathered white paint peeling off the sides. It looked old, maybe even abandoned, but it had a certain charm. The kind of place that felt lived in, with stories hidden in its walls. I wasn't so sure. The house looked a little too quiet, like it had been waiting for us. But I nodded, trying to match Jake's enthusiasm. We grabbed our bags and headed inside. The front door creaked loudly as we pushed it open, and the smell of musty air and old wood greeted us. The inside of the house was as old as the outside, with faded wallpaper and hardwood floors that groaned underfoot. It was around midnight when I first heard it, a faint noise like footsteps upstairs. At first I thought it was just the house settling, but the sound continued, slow and deliberate, as if someone or something was walking across the floor above us. It sounds like someone's walking around. We both sat in silence, listening. The footsteps had stopped, but the air in the room felt heavier, as if the house itself was holding its breath. But the night going deeper, things got worse. We had been out exploring the area during the day, hiking through the nearby woods, but by the time night fell, the atmosphere in the house had shifted. The air felt thick, almost suffocating, and the creaks of the house were louder, more persistent. Around 11 p.m., we heard the footsteps again. This time, they were unmistakable, heavy, deliberate thuds coming from the second floor, moving slowly down the hallway. Jake and I both froze, staring at the ceiling. "That's not just the house," I whispered, my heart racing. Jake stood up, his face pale. "Let's go check it out." Against every instinct telling me not to, I followed him up the stairs. The hallway was dark, the only light coming from the faint moonlight filtering through the small window at the end. The air was freezing, colder than it should have been. As we walked down the hall, the floor creaked beneath our feet, but the footsteps we had heard earlier were gone. We checked every room, nothing. No signs of anyone else, no explanation for the noises. But as we were about to head back downstairs, something caught my eye. In the corner of the room I had been sleeping in, near the closet, was a dark stain on the floorboards. "What's that?" I asked, pointing it out. Jake crouched down, frowning. "Looks like blood." My stomach churned. The stain was old, faded, but unmistakably blood. And as we stared at it, the temperature in the room dropped even further. I could see my breath in the air. "We need to leave," I said, my voice trembling. "Now." Jake stood up, nodding, but before we could move we heard it, a low, guttural whisper coming from the closet. "Get out." We bolted downstairs, grabbed our car keys, and ran for the door. But when we tried to open it, the door wouldn't budge. It was as if it had been sealed shut. Jake yanked on the knob, cursing, but it wouldn't move. Suddenly the whispering grew louder, echoing through the house. "Get out. Get out." We both froze, turning toward the living room. And that's when we saw it. A figure stood in the doorway, its form barely visible in the darkness. It was tall, unnaturally thin, and its face, if you could call it a face, was twisted into a grotesque, inhuman shape. Its eyes were hollow, dark pits that seemed to bore into us, and its mouth hung open in a silent scream. For a moment we couldn't move, paralyzed by fear. Then, the figure started moving toward us, slowly at first, then faster. Its limbs jerking unnaturally as it lunged forward. "Run!" Jake shouted, and we both bolted up the stairs, slamming the door to my bedroom behind us. We could hear the thing moving outside, its footsteps heavy on the floorboards, its whispers now a constant, guttural chant. I pressed my back against the door, my heart pounding in my chest. "What the hell is that?" "I don't know," Jake gasped, his face pale with terror. "But it's not human." For the rest of the night, we stayed locked in the room, too terrified to move. The whispers never stopped, and the figure kept circling the house, its presence always just out of sight. Every time we thought it was gone, we would hear it again, the slow, deliberate footsteps, the raspy breathing just beyond the door. By morning, we were exhausted, but the whispers had finally stopped. We gathered our things, determined to leave the house for good. But when we went downstairs, the front door was wide open. swinging gently in the breeze. We didn't question it. We didn't look back. As we drove away from the farmhouse, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had been in that house wasn't done with us. It had let us leave, but its presence still lingered, watching, waiting, and somewhere, deep in the woods behind us, I thought I saw the figure again, standing in the shadows, watching as we disappeared down the road.